I mean, the content from other women, other young women, a lot of it is like they post themselves in like really like skimpy outfits or like really really sexualized poses, or they're wearing like a bunch of makeup, or they've got like they like edit or like filter their bodies, or they even have like plastic surgery they're done on their faces or their bodies. And I mean, aside from that, a lot of it was just like complaining about like just how tough growing into a woman is, like how scary periods and the possibility of pregnancy and the pain of childbirth and then eventually going through menopause. And I find that no girls or women really ever talked about like the great things about being a woman and the great things that come with all of those things. And I find that this, not only was it like this on the internet, but even from like the girls and women that I grew up around me with were kind of like that as well.
It's really interesting to me that our society, and we've been doing it for a long time, says that they're empowering women, but at the same time, they're not. They're empowering a specific type of woman that will assume a stereotypical male role. And that doesn't make that bad, but our society is not celebrating the other side. I've talked to moms all the time who say, I'm just a mom. What do you mean you're just a mom? And
they loved me and they wanted to figure out what was going on. And
correct.
why I felt this way, and that was just never figured out, unfortunately. It just went straight to, oh yeah, she's a boy, and behind my back they actually told my parents that if I wasn't allowed to basically do what I wanted in my transition, that I would be at risk of suicide.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Had you said that to the doctors?
No, I didn't. I wasn't suicidal.
No ideation,
until,
nothing.
I wasn't suicidal until I was
Transition.
a few years, yeah,
into
my medical transition.
Wow. Okay. So the doctors, they didn't probe on what is happening to you in your life. They didn't talk to you about anything. They just accepted that you should be a boy?
Yeah. And there is very little psychological evaluation. And there was like a lesson on how like breastfeeding and physical contact plays a role in the bond between mother and child, and then eventually goes on to affect like child development, like psychological, emotional development, problem solving. And I realized that like I was told before my surgery that I would lose my ability to breastfeed, but I didn't really think this was important because, I saw myself as a man and men don't do that. And I could just use formula.
15 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know what parenthood would look like for me because I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about like getting my schoolwork done and fitting in, but
when that hits you, that I can't breastfeed a child if I want to someday.
And I realized, like, not only did I lose the ability to naturally feed my kid, but I also could, it's so much more than just feeding them. Like, it plays a role in it's an important part of the bond between a mother and her children. And I didn't know this, but when I realized that I took this away from myself, I felt like a monster, like that was probably my worst. I was probably at rock bottom at that point, and I just spent a few weeks just at my absolute lowest. And it wasn't until like maybe like 2 weeks later after I finished that lesson that I was like, this is all wrong, and I regret every single step of this. This shouldn't have happened, and it's just made everything worse, and I feel like I'll never be able to go back. And that is true in some ways.
You know that this was not you being a monster. This was not you. This was you as a kid making decisions that honestly shouldn't have, in my opinion, shouldn't have been made.
And they shouldn't have been.
Shouldn't have been options for you. But not to blame anybody else, but you know that anything that happened, you can release that. You know that, don't you? Good.